Hello, welcome back. Today's January 20th, and this is the L1 show where we share links with friends. What?
It's not January 20th.
What did
It's
you...
not even January 20th right now for us.
Oh my God.
Listen, chat, we just can't keep it together. We cannot keep it together.
The horrors persist, but so do we.
It's January 30th.
That's what I was confused by.
Okay. Well, you can be forgiven for not knowing what the date is because no matter what the date is, we just keep seeing the same old thing. And here's a great example. First, we see the solution, the proposed solution, which I don't know if it's going to solve much. In the next story, we'll see the problem, the real problem.
The headline from CNN is the Biden administration is planning action to stop hostile foreign governments exploiting Americans' personal data. You don't even have to read this. I'll just go ahead and tell you. What they're planning, not going to work.
The idea is that all this data capturing could be going to other countries, like, because anybody can buy it, right? Why wouldn't they do that? So how are they going to stop that? There's no real concrete plan.
We've got an empire built of oily rags. How do we stop that? It's like, well, can we deal with the fact that there's oily rags?
Yeah, can we just not put oil all over the rags? No.
Are you kidding? We just figured out how to produce even more oily rags.
Now, why wouldn't we want to stop the oily rags? Why wouldn't the solution just be to actually go to the source? Well, perhaps the next story will shed some light on that.
The New York Times reports that the N.S.A. just buys Americans' internet data without warrants, the letter says. What the people that wrote this and the N.S.A. is being very coy around actually admitting is they can just buy the internet data by peering inside of large ISPs. So they can just buy capacity in a data center and just watch what's going on in a data center, and they can see all the unencrypted traffic. And they can't, I mean, I'm on the fence as like, is that okay or is that not okay? Because the traffic's encrypted, and they can just sort of observe all those unencrypted flows. And it's like,
Really? Because I'm about a football field away from the fence, and they're not okay, camp. But it just goes to show you that they don't really want to stop data collection.
No.
They love data collection, and they're never going to prevent it for real. They probably would prefer that China not get it. But if it's a choice between China gets it and so do we, or it doesn't exist, I think they're always going to go with China gets it and so do we.
Think of all the lobbyists, too, who are probably like, we really depend on that data collection for our profits, so we're going to give you some money to keep that going.
what dystopian sci-fi was it where they had like the camera balls in the sky that were just always all over everything? I think
There could be any of them.
I mean, that's how you should think of it. In the data center, there's a giant ball of camera eyes just watching everything. If every small town, if you always looked up and it's like, oh, there's the giant camera eyeball thing, you probably would feel differently about it. I mean, that doesn't feel amazing.
In many large cities, that's a literal thing.
I went to Lowe's right before I came here. I stopped by, and they have the camera that like looks at you, and they project it over the cashier thing. And I'm like, this is so uncomfortable. Please don't put this here.
Yeah,
That's the NSA in data centers. But it's the giant eyeball thing.
And soon, satellites communicating directly with cell phones might not be looking right at you, but it's going to be monitoring you from the sky.
The Eye of Sauron, that was just a prototype. We've mass-produced it.
He was connected to the ground. We could go anywhere we want. And it is that horrible time of year where you have to start worrying about the tax man and figuring it all out because they can't tell you how much you owe. That would be too easy. But this year, please be more aware that every tax service basically is a liar.
Yay, taxes. The FTC has banned TurboTax from advertising free services, calling it deceptive.
Did you like the quote from the guy?
Yeah.
In this? He was so salty.
Intuit is very, very salty about this, and I am here for every minute of it. They called the ruling deeply flawed, and the judge looked at this, and I'm paraphrasing here, but the judge says, you said this was free, except if you made money on days ending in Y.
The caveat is it's only free if you are just like in abject poverty. So what's the cutoff? Like,
$17,000.
yeah, so if you make more than that per year, then it's no longer free. They kick you up to the next tier, but they don't tell you that until you've actually gone through the whole process and they've performed a service.
Which is just an amazing dark pattern. But the judge actually, he didn't call it dark patterns, but the judge found a ton of amazing, incredibly evil dark patterns in this. And so Intuit really does not want light shed on the fact that this is so scummy.
Cope and sieve.
Yeah. Also, this is kind of a microcosm too, because in their paid products, it suggests that even for their paid products, they are monetizing this data. Stay tuned for that, because that's going to be a recurring theme in this episode. It's like, wait a minute, you're saying if I give you money, you won't be scummy, and yet when I give you money, you're still scummy anyway.
And I have to do this at the barrel of a gun, and then you're going to sell my data? There is no opt-out. I could do it myself, I guess, but sometimes it gets very complicated based on your business dealings. And the FTC is also looking into this new kind of situation we've got that is showcased by Microsoft and OpenAI, where Microsoft, being threatened by all these various antitrust things, knows they can't just buy OpenAI. So they do it in little incremental steps and insert themselves. And was the Sam Altman thing just a vehicle for that? This woman's going to find out.
The FTC has opened an inquiry into big tech's partnerships with leading AI startups, including OpenAI. Okay. It's like, how does this work exactly? It sure just looks like you're doing a reverse hostile takeover.
Yeah. It looks like you kicked out everybody on the board that you didn't like and that got in the way of you and that stuck to the whole open principle, but you just didn't put your name on it.
We're pivoting from open to closed.
I think Microsoft had a comment there, and they were like, no, we're just offering the compute and the hardware. This has nothing to do with control. Don't look at that board member. Don't worry about him. He's non-voting.
Or all our investing. Don't worry about that.
He just sits in a corner smoking a cigarette. Don't worry about him.
Inside?
Clipping his nails audibly during the meetings whenever something comes up he doesn't like. And we'll talk about this more in the AI section, but Sam Altman has come out and he says, hey, listen, if I'm going to control the world with artificial intelligence, I'm paraphrasing, I'm going to need a lot more power, insane amounts of power. So you plebs need to get on that so that we can, continue the metamorphosis. And the U.S. government says, all right, Sam.
The U.S. government opens 22 million acres of federal lands for solar. I was looking into this. I was trying to find a downside, but basically they're saying if you're going to build a solar farm, you can use federal land. There you go.
Some people claim it's environmentally dangerous in some situations, but I think that's true of almost any human development.
We're gonna clear cut a forest so we can install all these solar panels. Okay, that doesn't sound amazing. We've got all these federal lands that are just open desert.
A lot of the federal lands, are out west where it is just open.
Well, why wouldn't we do that? That sounds amazing.
How great would it be for van life if you could park near these and just plug right in?
How cool would it be if one of the van life jobs is like, we will give you $20 if you
sweep them?
Yeah.
Let's there's campground hosts. Like that's the thing a lot of van lifers do for like a season. You could be the person who maintains the solar panels.
That'd be pretty easy if you had like one of those backpacks that just with the blower on it.
Yeah.
Just go through every day.
Leaf blower.
Hose them down.
That's how you get your grocery money, and then you get your vans already paid for. What an amazing sounding retirement.
It sounds like we just created a business model. We
could be a contractor for government.
It'd be like the Amazon stuff, It's like we don't own these people. They're not our employees, but we contract with them as our drivers and our solar array.
We should look for a map that is an intersection of fiber optic lines, federal lands, and undeveloped desert or something that does not have a lot of brush or anything like that, and ideally doesn't get a lot of storms or rainfall, and put a data center right there because you get free power and free internet.
We're going to need that power for all the electric vehicles that are apparently coming, and some of those electric vehicles are a little bit more worrying than others, according to the United States government.
U.S. to ban Pentagon from buying batteries from China's CATL and BYD because we just keep buying these Chinese batteries.
A lot of people claim that the Chinese batteries are poor quality, tofu dreg. There's a lot of social media that shows the cars on fire in China. That may be cherry-picked, who knows. But the alarming thing here, if you believe that, is that Ford will still be using CATL batteries in some of their new vehicles.
They're not TAA compliant anymore, so you can't sell them to basically, not really, but it's fine. But just before the show, I forgot to bring it up. I'll bring it up for the next episode. I got some 18650 batteries, lithium ion, but they're not lithium ion. They're sodium. It's real. I got sodium ion batteries. No lithium in them. It's amazing.
We got to time this one correctly.
That's a Wired article. I actually got through a paywall while I was reading the stories last night. Like I didn't get a paywall at all on Wired. I don't know why.
Free articles.
Oh.
New machine.
Why would I have? Oh, maybe.
All the cookies are gone.
This one is just horrific, and this is probably our future. This turns the government into what Google is, where like you can't dispute anything, and it's just
a Kafka-esque nightmare
through no fault of your own. All right, here we go. Ready?
Cops use DNA to predict a suspect's face and tried to run facial recognition on it. So there's a company that's like, we can take your DNA and turn it into a face, and it doesn't work, and it's bad.
Well, it does output something.
Yeah.
Whether it's accurate, that's debatable.
So we don't actually know how this turned out. There was a data leak. What was the name of that? I can't remember the name of the organization, but they're like, ethical leakers. And it turned out they were like, wow, this cop actually came up with this and then tried to request to run it through facial recognition. There was no response in the data leak, so we don't know if that happened or if it didn't. Then they found one other time where I think in Florida, they were like, hey, we should do that. Which is just insane. And because it is an election year, expect to hear more and more about this kind of stuff, which we've been hearing about since at least 2004, but we never seem to change anything.
Expert shows how to tamper with Georgia voting machine in security trial. He shoved a USB stick in it and was able to get it to generate as many ballots as he wanted, which would swing the thing one way or the other. And it looked like a normal voter card. Like, here's your voter card, shove it in. And he's like, okay, this is my naughty, malicious voter card, which I've, just swapped, and then bad things happened.
Well, he had three ways. He had the bad voter card. He had a regular USB stick, which it has a USB port. He was able to put a payload on that. He also had an ink pen, which he used. I guess it was like a hard reset or something. And using the ink pen, he was able to basically do whatever he wanted with the machine.
Now, the good news is there is forensic evidence of this. But if the people, like the poll workers, look the other way, that's a bit of a problem.
And the argument, the defense here was, oh, you could never get away with that in a polling station. And the guy was like, well, let me just pull this curtain. And I was like, yeah, I can do what I want here. Because it is supposed to be private. And New York City is having some problems, and they have decided that the problem is all these free thoughts floating around. We got to do something about this.
All these shit posts.
The complainers.
New York City first to designate social media as an environmental toxin. That was not what environmental, like, you've diminished the importance of denoting lead as an environmental toxin.
You're not wrong, but also you're kind of wrong.
But if there's like chemicals coming off of a factory wafting through the air, I can't really opt out of that.
Yeah.
Social media, I can and have. Totally immune to. I mean, well, I guess the tracking pixels are a good argument in the other direction.
Yeah.
Tracking pixels are like the nanoplastics.
You'll never get away from them.
Media.
They're in your gut.
Some of the nanoplastics in your brain have gone to posting, toast and crouton memes occasionally that you do. It's like, I have to post this.
Well, they're so adorable.
Yeah, exactly.
What else can you do?
When's the last time you posted on Twitter? It's been a long time.
I think it was this year. Maybe.
In 2024?
Maybe. I'm good for like once every quarter.
You're going to get some video of the cats just screaming at the top of their lungs for no reason.
We get that on Twitch.
That's every night. I could give you an unlimited amount of that recordings. And Florida has jumped on this bandwagon, and they've decided to take it one further. However, I admit I've argued for this in the past, although I don't know.
How do you implement it, though?
In free speech, this also aligns almost perfectly with Krista's insane idea when she was talking about rearing her own children, which she doesn't have, and their device use.
Florida lawmakers vote to restrict children's access to social media. This doesn't... I think this is the job of the parent, but this doesn't seem unreasonable otherwise.
14. So they're saying 14. I think you said 16, right?
That's when I got my first cell phone. I was 16.
You sticking with that? That was a couple of years ago, I think.
Yeah, probably. I would like to avoid it.
The 15 year is going to be a hard battle.
Yeah.
There's also the whole, like, can you demonstrate at least enough maturity to understand it's like, oh, there's a darkness here. I need to put it down.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? Roll this in with a driving test.
I wouldn't be opposed to like my kid using a desktop. It's just the issue is like the kids have access to it all the time on their phone, and they can't get away from it because it's constantly buzzing. And it's like you don't need that in your life.
Will this thing lead to misprogramming?
Well, more importantly, will this lead to you having to prove your identity on social media?
Yeah.
Because that seems to be where it's going. In this iteration, they're saying if you are sure, because if the kids have already reported their age, because it's not illegal right now, you have to go, if it's a Florida kid, you got to go in, you got to delete everything, all the data.
Which they'll definitely do.
Which shouldn't we do that anyway? Just don't keep my data. But
again, the oily rags.
Yeah.
And one thing about Gen Z, though, is the youth of America, their education might not be good, but they seem to have figured out the scam that is the military. And you don't have to be, Nostradamus to look at the world around you. And it's like, well, there could be China. There could be Russia. Somalia. What did little Somalia do to us? But they don't want to fight those wars. So how do you convince them to do it?
The Army has partnered with famous YouTubers on Fortnite, hoping to boost Gen Z recruitment. Operation Belong, you belong here. One of these was so badly received that the person that had been sponsored deleted everything.
It seems like these really popular social media people have very few scruples when it comes to this kind of thing. Yeah. They just do it, and then when there's big backlash, they back out slowly.
That's BattleBit did a co-op thing with I think was it the Pentagon or someone, because they did a whole event, like a weekend event that was like, play BattleBit and join the military. It's like, that's not the same thing.
They point out that, I don't know what the BattleBit metrics are, but they point out that, the user base for Fortnite is shockingly young. Yeah. They're really going after children here to fight the wars. And artificial intelligence is a terrifying thing. We're seeing story after story of election interference, deep fakes, and so forth. And everybody's like, we got to get on top of this. I believe that it's going to come down to AI is only used by the government and people of authority, and you plebs cannot have it. This act would certainly back that up.
There was no AI fraud. There was the No AI Fraud Act written by Fraudulent AI, because whoever wrote it is hallucinating. Okay. The headline is terrible, but the law itself, like, you should read it.
It's also terrible.
Yeah, and it's just, it really, they try, this was the celebrity one, right? It's like you have a right to publicity. Like, they talked a little bit about the right to publicity in there, but then they ham-fist a bunch of things in there that don't make any sense.
The big things about this one is that it takes the whole idea of copyright and applies it to just your person. And there is it's infinite, first of all.
And it doesn't seem like it's written for plebs.
So if you wanted to do an AI of Thomas Jefferson, not allowed under this, because it would infringe on his, whatever they called it.
His likeness.
It bypasses 230 completely by not dealing in any of that existing stuff and calling it the new thing. And it basically says that, like, anything that gets posted about me that I don't like, I can take action. It's not going to pass. God help us if it passes.
It on a meta level, it makes me think that our literacy is slipping away. Like, this is
we've seen so many obvious signs of that.
But this is undeniable. I mean, this is like dementia. It's like people have lost the ability to communicate with words. It was just word salad. It was just a soup of nothingness.
I think taking away people's ability to communicate is at the heart of this.
One could maybe argue the same thing with language models as well, where it's like, well, the AI will think for me. It'll get my thoughts out.
One group that still is allowed to communicate pretty much with impunity and lie with no consequences are lobbying groups. And oh boy, are they working overtime on this community broadband stuff.
TechDirt's headline is Telecom Monopolies are once again funding covert, sleazy local attacks on community broadband networks. Yeah, some of the ads look like, oh, we just barely got marginal DSL. This is going to make it really even worse.
It's Massachusetts. It's like called Mass something, this new lobbying group. But their arguments are basically like, are we really wasting our time with this when Massachusetts has so many other problems? Which, on some level it's true, but this is an easy one to solve.
You can be concerned about more than one thing at once.
I don't know. Up till now, they've done a good job convincing people that we just can't solve the pull of fiber to every building problem.
Yeah, because the private sector is not allowed to because of monopolies. There's definitely a dude out there who's willing to do that.
Isn't this same cable made of copper, and you're telling me we can't do it if it's made of glass? Yes.
And here's a terrifying headline, not in that what it talks about, but in that logo up at the top. Because this is, to boil it down, oversimplify it, mind-reading technology.
DARPA. Wait, this is a DARPA website? Non-surgical neural interfaces could significantly expand the use of neurotechnology. Yes. Think about the machine and the machine goes.
Or think about liberty and you go to the pod.
We really need to know what this guy's thinking under any circumstances. Okay.
Listen to my thoughts, and it's just that microwave sound.
The modem.
Yeah.
And here's another terrifying headline, because now you take that horrible entity and you partner it with the biggest corporations in the world. What could go wrong there, right?
Nvidia, Microsoft, Google, and others partner with the U.S. government on AI research program.
So this is also DARPA and the DoD and Homeland Security with all these monster tech names. They're going to get together, figure out how AI needs to shape your life.
Fabulous. Some of this, I saw the DoD applying AI to learn how to better apply policy, and it's like, that seems like a reasonable conservative use of AI. But is this covering a more sinister use?
Unless that AI comes up with, you should all be terminated, then I don't agree. And Starlink was smacked down by the FCC. They were not given any of the super ISP funding because the FCC claimed that they weren't good enough. And a lot of people are saying, hey, I've got it. It's pretty good. You should give them money. In this case, actually only one person. I don't know where the manipulation is going here. Possibly just both sides.
Yeah. Viasat tries to stop a citizen effort to revive the FCC funding for Starlink. So Viasat and Hughes are the old guard satellite companies. They might as well be buggy whip manufacturers. And they're really annoyed and freaked out that Starlink is so much better than them, and also technically satellite internet. But it's like horse-drawn buggies are a form of transportation the same way that cars are. Hughes and Viasat are dead companies walking. Like, they have no need to exist in a world with something like Starlink. It is literally from a horse-drawn carriage to modern technology.
How long until you can just hotspot your phone from the satellite?
They're literally working on that right now. So not necessarily even Starlink. You could get this from, I mean, if Jeff could have gotten his Blue Origin off the ground, there's so many jokes you could make there about, flaccid.
We all know what it looks like.
It's just,
So
We've
does
seen
he.
the photos.
Yeah. So does he.
But, we would have competing Starlink-like companies just furthering the nails in the coffins for Hughes and Viasat. But Viasat's very salty. They don't realize that they're a dead company yet, or maybe they do.
They're dead. They just don't know it yet.
Yeah, the FCC rules for this was that they wanted 100 megabit and certain latency goals, and Starlink has got to come close. But Starlink is going to need more satellites in order to consistently hit those goals. But for, our area, Starlink is fantastic.
Yeah, a lot of my neighbors have it, and they say they like it a lot.
But he's also blasting satellites every week. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to get better. Now, here's a sad one, because we, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, do use Patreon. Thank you, patrons. But we do have to point out when they do bad things. And oh boy, are they doing a bad thing here, because they're doing the old data selling, or at least they want to, but they are prohibited by law.
The Ars Technica headline is, blocking platforms from sharing user video data is unconstitutional. Please, we need to monetize this. We should build our own video platform.
Oh, but the hosting cost.
If you're watching on Floatplane, thank you.
You're not going to do the bingo card?
What's the bingo
The
card?
VHS records.
Oh,
Yeah, they referenced that directly in this
Yeah.
article. I was like, oh, Wendell talks about this all the time.
Yeah, the VHS. Yeah. Well, it's just, there's so many other things that seem like they should have the same protection, and they don't.
Yeah, right. So this, I'll do it for you. There was a guy named, what was his name? Like Bark? And he was a Supreme Court justice. And when he was put onto the Supreme Court, somebody went and looked up all his VHS records, because it was public information back then. And they were like, look what I can do to you. Be a good Supreme Court justice.
It wasn't even public records; it was business records,
And it
which
wasn't-
is how they've literally stolen your email.
It wasn't even like salacious stuff either. It was like,
No.
he really likes Bond movies.
He
Like,
was just renting regular. You think it might be something,
Yeah.
nasty, but no, it's just regular stuff. So immediately, because power was threatened, their privacy was threatened, they made a law that says, no, you're not allowed to do that. That ports over to something like Patreon. So Patreon can't sell your data of what video of ours that you're watching when you give us free money.
Thank you.
But Patreon doesn't want that anymore. They're like, please let us know what they're watching.
Meanwhile, we're like, can we
Let
get
us sell it.
our phone browsing data with the same level of protection, please?
No, you're insane. Why would you think that? And moving over to Asia, China had a big shakeup a few weeks ago when they declared that there were going to be new rules about gaming and the gambling mechanics and what you can do online. But it seems that was not enough of the changes for them. They seem to be redrafting.
China quietly pulls draft gaming rules from its website. So they were saying, this is how we're going to do this, and this is the rules you need to comply with. And they've pulled it. Don't know if they're going to get worse or better. Probably worse.
Do you think there's some poor bureaucrat over there who's like, oh, I have to revise this again? How many times have they written it?
It is funny, in the context of the stories that we covered earlier in terms of the Florida law and social media limitations and TikTok, and this is their approach to do that, is to just say, when you're using your device for gaming and you're under a certain age, it is limited to this many hours, period. Technological enforcement. They
already have the infrastructure to enforce it.
Yeah.
Which is what our leaders desperately want, which is horrible and dystopian.
And that's why we're worried, and you probably should be. It's do we really need the infrastructure? Because it's going to get misused.
And how powerful is a government that has that level of control, even outside their own country, because they have a huge population that people want to do business with? Well, here's a terrifying explanation of exactly how much control they have.
Science fiction awards held in China under fire for excluding authors. So there was an author that had an award-winning publication that probably would have won this, but he said some things critical of China, and he's like, oh, that's probably why I didn't win this.
There was several of them. I think the biggest name was Neil Gaiman, one of his Sandman books. He has said some stuff about the CCP in the past, so he just simply wasn't on the ballot, even though he technically was on the ballot.
Neat.
And the China-Taiwan situation continues to simmer. Taiwan had the big election, and the anti-China guy won, which certainly has raised some stakes. There's a lot of companies that don't want any part of that conflict.
The headline from Tom's Hardware is AMD removes Taiwan branding from CPUs and says that the change was not made to appease China. It used to say diffused in Taiwan. It no longer does.
But it still says made in Malaysia. Turns out that not every CPU company even bothers with this because of obvious reasons. So AMD is kind of tiptoeing back. But again, it's obvious why they're doing it. And Sony taking a big loss in India this week.
Sony ends a $10 billion merger with India's Z, setting the stage for a legal row.
It sounded like they just couldn't get the deal done, and they wouldn't grant an extension, the guy that runs Z. So Sony was just noped out. But now they're saying that they're going to try to sue him for a back-out fee.
So they agreed on that up front. What was it in the other? There was another one of those major mergers, and it was $1 billion. Oh, that was one of Elon Musk's things with the Twitter thing. It's okay, give us the money, and then the rest is history.
There was also the Activision one before it actually happened.
Yeah.
There was talk of that. And if you live in the Philippines, apparently in the capital city there, you have the worst traffic in the world right now. And a lot of people are saying that's caused by mismanagement of the government, who doesn't have to deal with it.
Philippines president sparks outcry for using a presidential helicopter to see a Coldplay concert.
What blew my mind about this article is that Coldplay's still touring. I didn't know they were still active.
And not only are they touring, but they're apparently filling up stadiums in the Philippines and causing traffic jams that shut the city down.
I like Coldplay, all right. But I wasn't aware they were still around.
Enough to take the corporate helicopter?
No.
He's made this a superficial statement, but what can you do? What can you argue there? It's pretty obvious what happened. There was no need for you to do that. How about the president just doesn't see Coldplay?
That would cause a state issue. We can't.
I was sure that there was more to this and that this can't be right, but this seems like it's right.
Why would you?
Just because it's so dumb. It's why would you do that?
Because they want to sell products.
Apple pays a $13.7 million U.S. fine for Russia because Russia is something anti-competitive rules, App Store or something. Russia said, it sounds like about $13.7 million U.S., and Apple paid it.
Well, every European company country has done that.
Yeah, but
why is this different?
With the embargoes and everything else, it's like we can't actually.
Yeah,
send
would you
any
be
money
allowed
right
to
now.
do that? I would think you'd get in trouble on the U.S. side.
Apple's allowed to do whatever they want. That's true. I don't know if you guys noticed.
Our real
that.
government is just, yeah.
But, well, I say that just as we have an obvious situation where they're not doing what they want, but they are doing it in a sort of tantrumy way and making it as diluted as they can.
Apple is bringing sideloading and alternate app stores to the iPhone. Apple said they haven't figured out exactly how we're going to do this, but we're probably going to require $1 million bond and assurances from the company that their app store will protect users and all this feel-good stuff that basically makes it impossible to load any kind of open source software on your phone from a store. It's like this. Apple, you use a lot of really good open source software. People do actually make software for the good of humanity. I know that's impossible for you to believe, but it is a thing that happens.
They've also said that if you do payments outside of the App Store, like if you link away from the App Store, they still plan on vetting the product outside of the App Store.
Yeah.
Like how?
They're going to charge a core technology fee. So again, that whole this is our phones. We own the phones from now until the end of time. If you want to run apps on them, you have to pay them. Also, popular apps. I think we've got a different story in the business section. Like just the stuff from this is insane. It's completely insane.
It's 50 cents after your millionth download.
Yeah.
Every download is 50 cents, which is really going to eat in to your profits.
This is almost like we're making your cold water pipes out of wax and cardboard, and they fail at kind of a high rate, and you can only use our wax and cardboard water lines when your water lines fail.
Well, you could go to another person and get PVC put in, but we will have to inspect their work and confirm it. If there's anything wrong with it, we won't allow it.
It's weird, though, because in order to do the inspection, they're charging you as much as it costs for the cardboard and wax water lines.
This metaphor is getting a little sweaty.
The point is, nothing's really changing.
Yeah. And it's like, it's a computation device. Can I just run applications on my computation device? No.
Well, not only can you not run them, but over in the UK, or no, this is EU, you can't even have it till you're a certain age. This is even further than the Florida thing.
Ban smartphones for under 16s, prime ministers have been told. Okay.
Yeah, I think still letting someone have a computer is one thing, where they can still get on the internet, but it's just not in your pocket all the time. It's not on your person. It's not as intrusive.
That's not a law. That is a proposal.
Right.
And they also have some warnings, which is kind of some obvious stuff that we all know, but maybe not all the constituents do.
AI will make scam emails look legitimate, UK cybersecurity agency warns. I'll go you one better. Scammers are already using your Facebook posts to simulate your voice. They're calling your parents and saying, "Oh my gosh, I was on vacation. Please send me money. I'm in jail." That's literally already happening. It will continue to happen. It'll happen at scale.
You got to come up with the confirmation word with your family.
Use the safe word.
If you don't hear that, just leave them.
Listen, they hit me in the head with a screwdriver. I don't remember the word.
We have covered exhaustively just how dystopian and horrible it is to be an Amazon drone in those warehouses where they put a wrist thing on you and track everything you do, including your poops and pees, and the French have had enough.
Amazon fined for excessively intrusive, quote-unquote, surveillance of its workers in France. This was, I looked at this and I expected it to be the standard Amazon fare. Amazon wanted you to do quality control of items as you were packing them to within a window of 1.25 seconds. So if you took too little time, they penalized you. And if you took too much time, they penalized you.
That's in trying to judge at 1.25 seconds just in your brain.
Yeah.
At that time. It's madness. So they're going to get that percentage fine, which is going to be $32 million or 3% of annual revenue in France.
I was kind of hoping they'd riot, but can't win them all.
And we are being monitored. We all know that. But the depths of it and the various vectors can still surprise us.
Inside a global phone spy tool monitoring billions. This has a light link to the earlier story we were talking about the N.S.A. gobbling up data. Not just in data centers. This is also another vector. Oops. Sorry. This is another vector for them to buy data. This time, this is from an advertising organization called Patterns.
So a lot of app developers might use this and not really know about what's going on.
Hey, I found a free library to do this.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, that library also comes with some strings attached.
But
namely that.
Patterns advertises that it is able to mine that data in a big way, and it sells it all. FCC's not banning them, at least not yet. And if that's not bad enough, there's there's more vectors. Everything about your phone is tracking you, and you might think like, hey, I'm hip to it. I'm smart. I know how to defeat it. I put it in this pouch. I don't take it with me anywhere. And still,
I might as well not have it.
iPhone apps secretly harvest data when they send you notifications, researchers find. Turns out that can be used to fingerprint you. You get a whole bunch of notifications from a whole bunch of different apps. We can identify the phone based on what you got installed. Over a long enough time period, we can tie that back to an identity.
Can't turn it off. It just happens.
It's like the AirDrop thing where researchers point out, it's like, hey, Apple, the AirDrop thing will identify individual users based on serialized unique identifiers inside the phone. And Apple's like, would anybody actually do that? And then a year later, it's like, oh, it turns out those 1,000 kidneys came from exactly that exploit.
Now, they did get some quotes here from, I think, Facebook and some other companies. And they were like, why don't you just send the notification and get back a Boolean value? Why do you have to get the time that the device has been on and, all these other little telemetry things? And they were like, we definitely don't use it for advertising, if that's what you're asking.
Nobody mentioned the word advertising. Why are you talking about advertising?
You're weirdly defensive here, Facebook. What's going on?
Oh, and here is the horror story. We talked earlier about how they're using the DNA-generated face, running that through facial recognition. What is the worst case scenario there? Well, it's this
story.
And it's horrible.
A man was jailed. Bad things happened to him in jail. He was also beaten. And this is as a result of a facial recognition match, which was not actually a match. He's filed a $10 million lawsuit. We're going to get some more details about this. Dude was 61 years old, and supposedly the thing that his picture matched for was a mugshot from the 1980s for a crime he didn't commit and was 2,000 miles away when it happened. They didn't even look into it. The store that he was applying for a job at ran him through the thing and was like, whoa. Here you go. And they reported it to police, and then the police were like, okay, sounds good. And
Yeah, that's the scariest part.
Yeah.
Nobody even double checked
Yeah.
after he was like, I wasn't there.
The police were like, oh, Macy's says he's guilty? Good enough for us.
Macy's isn't even a cool store anymore.
that's like Apple. Apple's like, oh, we should do this thing. And then law enforcement's like, oh, Apple can't be wrong. Apple's in a cult.
But maybe some of you are waking up. Most of you probably are. But the normies might be getting hip to some of this stuff, might be hurting some sales. So Ring has decided to publicly let you know, hey, we're not part of this anymore.
Ring ends a feature that lets police ask users for videos via the Neighbors app. It's weird, though, because I don't think anybody's going to believe them. Even if they did this, I just don't think they're going to do it.
Well, you can still get it with a warrant. But you can't just intrude on people.
Like, getting it with a warrant is how it should work, right? Like, you shouldn't just be asking people, hi.
Well, I would argue that we shouldn't have surveillance mounted to our homes.
Right. But at the very least, if you're going to have it, they should have to have a warrant to get it.
And our little city here does have all these Ring agreements. And you know how I know that? Because of this beautiful tool that the EFF has given us.
The EFF adds Street Surveillance Hub so Americans can check who's checking on them. So, yeah, you can just put in your address, like, what's going on in my area? And then just be like, oh no.
They had us listed for Ring, but not Flock. But I think we're getting Flock, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Must not be done yet. Maybe they did update the database. And this harkens back to remember the red light engineer? It is.
Yeah.
It does not serve you well to point out flaws in security when those securities come from powerful institutions.
IT consultant fined for daring to expose shoddy security. Spotting a plain text password and using it in research without authorization has been deemed a crime, even though this person is a career security researcher. This is punitive.
That's what got him. He had previously, not anymore, but previously worked for a competitor of this company. And that seems to be how they got away with this. They were like, oh no, this is corporate espionage. This is not white hat research. So he pointed out that he could pull the password in plain text and he could use it. He didn't do anything bad. He contacted the company and he was like, hey. And the engineers were like, oh my God, thanks for letting us know that. And then some of the suits got a hold of that and they were like, wait a minute.
No good deed goes unpunished.
And let's just get into some horrible leaks and attacks.
Email threats to patients escalate after Fred Hutch cyber attack. I'd never heard of Fred Hutch.
Yeah, I've never heard of this either.
I think it's a local thing. But what happened here is cancer patients were getting emails that were like, hey, we know all of this stuff about you, and we're going to start telling everybody unless you pay up.
We're going to feed it to this malicious AI that we trained that's going to blog about all of your horrible things.
Or we'll swat you. And there's nothing you can do about that, and you know it, which is true because we have no Fourth Amendment. And Microsoft once again hacked, but this time not the plebs.
Microsoft executive emails hacked by Russian intelligence group, company says. This is amazing. They were looking for information about themselves.
And no two-factor on any of the...
That's too annoying.
I mean, yes, but also...
I think it's got to be part of your job at that level. And of course, the supply chain attacks are one of the most terrifying because who knows? Can you really go through... How much longer would a project take if you had to go through and vet every single library that you used? But you maybe should.
NPM registry users download 2.1 billion deprecated packages weekly, researchers say.
It is just maddening to try to keep it all updated. And we have the Moab, not the mother of all bombs, but the mother of all breaches.
Massive leak exposes 26 billion records in mother of all breaches. V-Contact records and Twitter and LinkedIn and what else was there?
Tencent was the big one.
Tencent, yeah. Hundreds of millions of accounts.
Billions.
Yeah.
So basically they got all the other leaks together, compiled them into one mega leak, and leaked it.
Fabulous.
And we covered the, what was the name of the UK thing?
There's a mail system.
Was it Horizon?
Yes, maybe.
Anyway, the post people...
The postmasters where they kept coming up short money and it was like, I don't know,
I didn't take anything.
And they locked them up, much like the Macy's sunglasses man. And it turns out Fujitsu was at fault there. They were like, oh no, our software was bad. How could we have known?
Fujitsu bugs that sent innocent people to prison were known from the start. Software bugs were hidden from lawyers of wrongly convicted UK postal workers. I believe that when you have somebody that hides something from the lawyers intentionally like this, when it's like a case of prosecution defense, that should be the death penalty. It should be that serious. No one should actually die from that, but it should be the death penalty.
Well, those people died from it. The people who got thrown in prison.
Well, some of them didn't know what to do, and so they just...
Yeah, they freaked out.
They turned off.
Do we know what... I don't know what the UK's actual rule is there, but I would imagine they'd have like the poisonous tree thing like we do, right?
One would think. But all of these people are going to get away with this and not be punished appropriately. But this is some serious, like, if it was known that this could possibly be a bug and that was hidden from lawyers, and then from that all of this happened, whoever is responsible for hiding that from lawyers, death penalty. And then this kind of problem doesn't happen again. Because it's that serious.
I'm kind of with you. The problem there is that you're giving the government the arbitrary ability to death penalty us. That's going to spread like wildfire.
They're going to create a situation where it's like, well, you didn't accidentally turn on read receipts in this email. Death penalty. It's like, well, that wasn't meant to apply.
It gets into that like post-French Revolution period where it's just like, I'm sorry, but everybody's got to die. That's just what we've come up with. And if you're looking at all this and you're saying to yourself, I need more privacy, well, on the Android, there is a copy of that OS that has been de-Googled, and with a lot of effort and annoyance, you can go through and maybe protect yourself. Now, the cell towers are still going to track you. There's no getting away from that. But if you're saying to yourself, man, I'm too busy for that, I'm too lazy, give me a super simple solution, and just let me pay monthly.
The absurdly optimistic headline from Stuff is 'OS could be the future of privacy. They did the thing that I always talk about where they sandbox Android and they make all the applications run in their own little sandbox Android. And like, hey, this could be a solution for privacy. It's wildly impractical.
And there's a subscription fee on top of your phone fee. Although they will waive that fee for 1 year if you buy the phone and service from them.
The problem with this eventually becomes, it's like, would you pay Google $15? I think we got another story about this, don't we? Would you pay Google $15 a month to have Android not spy on you and blah, blah, blah?
That's the story.
Okay.
$16.
The answer, yes, but even some of you that are saying no probably is also a yes. Like, the reason that I used to give Netflix money was convenience. Like, I can just have my TV shows. That's not a big deal. But the convenience and awesomeness of what Netflix was, not what it's become, was what made it awesome. But now they're taking my money and also running ads. And the fact that they didn't run ads was a large part of why I gave them money. If Google is responsible for taking money and also not running ads, eventually they're going to run ads anyway. How is that ever going to work?
That's not. That's why these people have a business model.
Yeah. But then it becomes a game of cat and mouse. See also Beeper Mini messaging.
Oh.
Where Apple and the messaging people were, trying to out arms race each other. Google will be in an arms race with these people because if that catches on, that is a threat to Google's bottom line.
Or YouTube ad blocking.
Yeah. And even if Google implemented this internally, it's still a threat to their bottom line. Because they could double their revenue. If people get used to paying for it, then they could just sneak back the advertisements and double their revenue.
And they don't want to condition anybody to not want ads.
Yeah.
Everybody should love ads.
Store at level1tax.com.
Patreon.
Float plane.
All right, we'll see you in the next one, which is going to be more business news. It was kind of business heavy.
This was very business heavy this week.
But it's not. This is government stories getting the year go off to a proper start, manipulating businesses in bad ways.
All right, that's it. Bye.